difficulty in entry of a new firm. Now, this is something that we need to understand. Why? Because yes, he has that power to charge different prices to different people at different times. So when the price falls, average revenue falls. So when the average revenue falls, automatically the marginal revenue will also fall at a faster rate. That's very important here. Who is going to talk about the product? Who is going to sell the product? Who is going to determine the price of the product? And he's not going to get back on that. Good morning and welcome to the fourth session in Chapter 6, Non-Competitive Markets, where we are going to talk about a very interesting topic called as the monopoly. The moment we talk about a non-competitive market, the game is slightly going to change. Why? Because this is a kind of market where one player dominates and everybody has to listen to him. And that's where monopoly becomes a very, very interesting topic. Now, moving further, let's try to understand the features of monopoly. Now, single seller. Look at the word here itself. There is only one seller or producer of a commodity in the market. So there is only one person who is going to talk about the product, who is going to sell the product, who is going to determine the price of the product, and he's not going to get back on that. Which means there is absolutely a blockade for the other players to enter. There's only one person who decides what the market is going to be today. There's only one person who decides what is the product that is going to be sold. So a single seller of a single commodity, monopoly is truly a distinctive feature to be looked upon. As a result, the monopoly firm has a full control over the supply of the commodity. Now, the word supply in economics is very important. Why? Demand is created by people. Supply is created by the company. So when you have the control over the supply, invariably you will also have a control over the demand. So this is why I always say that supply and demand are the two eyes of economics. Now, whenever we talk about this word supply, let's understand in a monopoly game, this person controls the supply of the product in the market. So he decides the quantity that's going to be available in the market today. So that's really a distinctive power. That's really a fantastic power that a monopoly has over in the market. Followed by the monopoly, when we talk about him, has also been an individual, it has been a group, or it has been a government itself. We all know the common example of railways, which is known for its monopoly for so many years, almost for more than 157 years that we know about. Now, when we talk about the railways, the government itself forms a monopoly here altogether. They don't want to give up on that factor. They want to continue the area of being a monopoly altogether. Now, a monopoly can exploit its buyers by charging almost any price for its product. Now, that's very, very important because of the exclusive control over the product. When you go to book a railway ticket, it has never been a time that you had the permission to bargain on the price of the railway ticket. There is always an option in Make My Trip when you want to book for a flight, which is an expensive option, no doubt about it, but still you have an option. But when you go back to railways, you don't have that option of going back and asking the railway authorities, can I have a discount on the price? Whatever price is being set by the railways, that is the final deed. That is the final act. Which means to say that monopoly has got an exclusive feature called as the control over the price. Whatever he sets as the price, as the tag price, and that is the final value. So that's where monopoly will have a control over the product because the pricing is in his hands. Followed by monopoly firm itself is a price maker and not a price taker. Never has been the day when a monopoly has to go back and accept the bargaining capacity of the consumer. No, not needed. Whatever the firm says, that is the price. Whatever the firm believes, that is the final figure that the consumer has to pay. So this is where I say that monopolies are the people who will never go back and listen to the lifestyle, to listen to the questions of the customer. They will always say that we are the price maker. Whatever price we say, you will follow, and we will not take price from you. So that's why we say this as a price maker. Now, the next thing, absence of close substitute of product, which is quite true. Why? Because as a monopolist, you do not have any close substitute. You have to go for that product only. Though some substitutes of the product may be available, but they're not close substitute. They're not the actual products altogether. Now, people might say coffee is a substitute to tea, or tea is a substitute to coffee. Now, but then ultimately, if you are going to talk about the distinctive choice that a consumer wants to make today, coffee still remains coffee, and that's my priority. Tea will also remain as tea. You cannot substitute, though we call them as substitutes, but they're not actually the equal substitutes that we are talking about. For certain people, tea still remains the topmost priority. So that's exactly where a monopoly plays the game. He says that there are no close substitutes available in the market that can match his product. So monopoly, again, a complete control over the market, followed by difficulty in entry of a new firm. Now, this is something that we need to understand. Why? Because entering into the market and competing with a monopoly, absolutely impossible. This is something which is very, very important that all of us have to understand here. Many a times, a monopoly does not even allow the existence of other firms in the market. So no new firm can come into the market, suddenly start selling or dominating the market. The monopoly is not going to allow you. He holds the market like a fortress. And he says very clearly that entry of any new firms is strictly prohibited. So that's where what happens is that he will try to block. Now that word, block the entry, that's very, very powerful word. Why? Because now you have the power to push the competition to that extent that where you are not going to allow any third firm to come inside your zone. So which means you are holding the fort very strong, and you know that that domain, that territory, that product, that entity is mine. So I would not allow anybody to touch upon it. So monopoly having a superpower in terms of controlling the market again. Followed by the price discrimination. As I have told you, price is always set by the monopoly. Price is always set by the firm, set by that individual, set by that government organization itself. So at any point of time, you do not have the power to bargain. You do not have the power to go back and ask, can I have a better price? No, that's not going to happen. So the price discrimination is a factor where I'm going to again talk about in a slightly different way, where I say that the price is going to be charged as per the will and wish of the monopoly. He will charge different prices to different customers, but the customer will not have the power to go back and ask this question, why are you charging differently? So again, when we go back and talk about the monopoly, the price discriminatory power, yes, he has that power to charge different prices to different people at different times. Followed by, he's a price maker. As I have told you, he has the power to choose and make the price for himself. Unlike the perfect competition where the output increases, price remains unchanged. So the price is not going to change at any point of time. Now, the shape of a demand curve under monopoly, we are going to see this. So let's now try to understand why, like an industry or a single seller with no close substitute, how will be the demand factor altogether here. Now just have a look here. If you look closely, you have the quantity demanded on the x-axis and you have the price on the y-axis. So that's very, very clear, and that's very, provident from the graph altogether. But look at the demand factor here. It's an inelastic demand. You cannot see that the fluctuations of demand happening. Price is pretty much rigid. So for the price, there is a quantity fix. If you lower the price, there will be a lower the quantity value also. So the shift in price, shift in demand is pretty much inelastic in nature. It is not flexible. It's not an open kind of factor altogether. Followed by the demand of the product is not in control of the monopoly firm. However, that is one thing that we are not really talking about. In order to increase the output to be sold, the monopolist will try to reduce the price and again start increasing the demand factor. Therefore, what happens here is that the demand curve will continue to slope downwards, no doubt about it. But here, the monopoly will try to see that if he wants to increase the demand, he's again going to play with the price factor. And since the elasticity of demand is inelastic, no close substitute is available, so you know that that demand curve is always going to slope downwards and it's a very, very inelastic pattern. Now, the other thing is that the average revenue curve. A monopoly firm faces downward sloping demand curve as more output can be sold only by reducing the price because of the price discrimination. He knows that, how to play the game in the market. If he wants to increase the quantity sold, he is going to reduce the price factor altogether. Followed by, look at the curve here. Now, your marginal revenue is a straight sloping curve downward, a steep curve, and automatically, moment he starts reducing the price, the average revenue curve, the demand curve starts coming down on a steeper basis. That's because if you have to increase the quantity, if you want to see the average revenue going up, you need to reduce the price and you need to sell more than what is expected in the market. So when you look into the graph, on the x-axis having the units sold and on the y-axis having your price, you can see the steeper line variation that's happening altogether. As we know that price is equal to average revenue, so when the price falls, average revenue falls. So when the average revenue falls, automatically the marginal revenue will also fall at a faster rate. That's very important here. So marginal revenue is less than the average revenue, nevertheless, because you are making the profit ultimately there. Now with that, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information shared through this particular session will be of a great help and benefit for you. Now in the upcoming sessions, we will be talking more about the monopolistic competition, which is yet another form of a non-competitive market. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.